Two, 1, 2, mic check. Hello, this is Priscilla with Scylla Travel, where I help you live the dream through travel. And Scylla Travel is a boutique travel agency that offers premium travel planning and advisory services for empty nesters, rising seniors, and people in the second act of their lives. So, what I do is I help curious travelers get the most out of their vacations by exploring more and connecting with the local culture. So, this is Priscilla with Scylla Travel, hoping that you and helping you live the dream. And I am so glad uh, to see you. Hello, Joanne. Nice to see you. Hello, Elmira. Good to see you. And Catherine. Good to see you, Catherine. How are ya? What are you drinking this evening? I'm drinking water because it's like hot here where I am in the Charleston, South Carolina area, and I've been battling with my sinuses. So let me take a little bit of water. Okay, let's see who is here. Got a new comment here. Okay, hello, Joanne. How are you? All right, so we're here today to talk about Marseille. And Marseille is the last stop on our wonderful river cruise, the Live the Good Life, and Some Soul, Juneteenth 2024. So that is June of next year. So June the 27th, excuse me, the 17th to the 27th, unless you decide to add on 3 days, 3 nights in Barcelona. So I've been talking about France since about the end of February because there's a lot that we don't know, a lot that I learned, and there's just so much more than we might believe or have been led to believe or just never learned. And now is the time, where we can engage. Those of us who can engage like to engage. So that's what this trip is about. Can everybody hear me? Okay, I'm going to check my second device. Let me know if you can hear me. Put a 1 in the comment section. So, Facebook, can you hear me? YouTube, can you hear me? Because I'm actually streaming live on Facebook and on YouTube. So, let me see because one time I did it and yep. And there we go. One time I talked for 20 minutes and there was no sound. So we're going to get into it. Let's go to Marseille. Marseille is a city on the southern coast on the Mediterranean part of France. It is close to the continent of Africa, close to Spain, close to Italy, close, really, really close. It's in the warm area of the country. France is a pretty big. It looks small on the map, but its climate ranges from cool to warm. So the northern part of France is cooler, like Paris is in the northern part, Normandy's in the northern part, and then you can travel all the way down to Provence. That's a province in France, sort of like a county, and it's pretty big. And Marseille is actually a city on the coast in the um, province of Provence, and that it got its name from Provence, got its name from the ancient Romans, because Italy is so close. There's some Alps right on the other side, um, and France was actually, before it was France, the first colony or the first place to be colonized and conquered by the Romans after they crossed the Alps coming from Italy. So France has a really big Roman footprint. There are colosseums and Roman ruins all over the country, even in Marseille. Marseille. Okay, so let's get into it. All right, Marseille is the oldest city in France. So, for those of you who didn't know, Marseille was actually settled by the Greeks. Um, the Greeks from Phoenicia. So the Greek islands are, it's different. It was different then than what it is today, but a certain part of Turkey was actually ancient Phoenicia. So we think of Greece now, we think of the Greek islands, but part of the coast near Turkey is also part of was part of Greece, and it was ancient Phoenicia. Now, this is just an image of um, the Greek colony of Marseille, and those are the old names. You will see the Gauls, you'll see Aquitaine, those are cities now. You'll see the Iberians, that's the Spanish. The Galicians are Spanish. In French, you'll see the Celtic tribes over more to the northern central area, but that's more on in Belgium. But where the Gauls are, those are the French. And you see another tribe called the Belgi, Aquitaine, there's also another group called the Occitan. That might be another way of pronouncing it, but some people actually still speak a form of Occitan in Provence, right? So there were a bunch of tribes before they became countries, and the Romans are the ones that actually got these European tribes together because they fought them off. So you've got the Germanic tribes up to the north. Um, so this is what it looked like when the Phoenicians, the Greeks, that branch of Greeks, created a colony in Marseille. So, and when they went there, they created and they brought their culture with them. And before that, they actually did not make wine. So the Greeks are the ones who brought winemaking with them to the area. So this is just a place called Jardin des Vestiges. I'm probably not pronouncing it correctly, but I'm getting better than I was. And this garden is where the remains of the ancient Hellenic harbor of Massalia is. So Massalia was the original name that the Greeks named it. And it was established about 600 BCE is when the Phoenicians, the Greek Phoenicians established the colony there. And then about 49 BCE is when the Romans took over and they renamed it Marsalia after one of their, after one of the Caesars. Let's see if I can go back. Yes, go back. All right, yeah. Renamed Massalia Augusta by the Romans in 49 BCE. So let's see, that's when it was conquered. And Jardin des Vestiges, that's a garden, and that's where the remains of the ancient Hellenic harbor in Massalia actually is. So if you go there, you can see the actual remains of the original harbor there. And winemaking in Provence, like I said, the Greeks are the ones who started that. They brought winemaking to Marseille. They brought it to them, and there were some other groups who contributed to winemaking in the region: the Gauls, the Catalans, the Savoyards. So those are the main groups that contributed to winemaking as it is today. Now, in the country, it depends on, there are actually 13 wine regions in France, and each varietal, or the variety of grape, um, is cultivated and grown based on the climate, the soil, and the northern part of the country, like in Champagne, in the Beaujolais area, they are characterized by your white wines, your lighter wines, with Elmira. Elmira, can you see me, Elmira? Elmira is saying she can't see. So I guess everyone else is seeing me. So Elmira, where are you? We are live. But okay, winemaking in the region, like I said, was started by, or the culture of winemaking came from these ancient peoples. in Provence. So all throughout France, traveling through Provence, you'll see lots of vineyards and also olive groves because they also make olive oil, as a matter of fact. So it's also a culturally diverse city. Marseille is a culturally diverse city. All right, so North Africa and West Africa today characterize the population. In the beginning, like I said, there was an original group of people who lived there before the Greeks came, but they merged, they intermarried with them and they became Greeks, and then came the Romans, and then came other groups of people, and so on and so forth. And because of where it is, close to the Mediterranean, it's always been a port city, so it's always been a culturally diverse city. It's actually the oldest city in um, France. So today you will see Marseille, you'll see people from North Africa and West Africa. That characterizes the city. So you'll see people from like Tunisia, Morocco, Algiers, and then you'll see people from West Africa coming from Senegal and some of the former French colonies. But that, because it's a port city, uh, and it is sort of a hub for people emigrating to the European continent, they actually go through Marseille many times because it's close. And it's, yeah, they could take a boat or ferry right across from North Africa into Marseille. All right. Now, creativity and intellectualism. Marseille was also characterized by creativity and intellectualism. So, this is just an example, and we talked about him before. This is Alexandre Dumas, and Alexandre Dumas, he was one of the greatest French writers of all times. When I was in school, we read The Three Musketeers. We also read The Count of Monte Cristo, and this is Chateau d'If. That is where Alexandre Dumas wrote, or he that was the background for the story of the Count of Monte Cristo in another book that he wrote. So this is like an island off the coast of Marseille, and it is actually a prison. It's not operating as a prison today, but it was back in the day, centuries ago it was. But the Count of Monte Cristo is actually a character that Alexander Dumas modeled after his dad, because his dad was a general and he was from the country of, I think it was Haiti, it was Saint Domingue. So his dad was half African, Senegalese, and half European. His father was a wealthy, talk about Alexander's granddad. He was a wealthy planter in Saint Domingue, and he had a son with a slave lady, a slave woman, um, on his plantation, and he actually took the son to back to France with him and got him educated. Okay, so Alexandre Dumas, and that's the setting for the Count of Monte Cristo. Now, Claude McKay during the Harlem Renaissance. So those of you who remember the Harlem Renaissance, that took place like in the 1920s. It started, and Claude McKay was actually one of the main characters during the Harlem Renaissance. And that was a period of time in Harlem in the US where back in those days, Harlem was a prosperous town and it was all Black, and all intellectuals lived there. There were lawyers, doctors. They were pretty prosperous there in Harlem. And during this period of time, Black intellectualism was on display. And Claude McKay was one of them. He was actually Jamaican born. He only lived in the US for 2 years, and then he took a trip to Europe. And he wound up staying or living in Paris for a few years, where he wrote most of his most famous books and poems. He was also a poet and a political activist. So he lived in during the 1920s. He lived in Marseille. He wrote his novel that was his most famous one, Banjo, and then Harlem Shadows was a collection of poetry. And also there was a novel called Romance in Marseille. He never did publish it because it was too risque for the time. So maybe about 10 years ago, they found his papers and someone else published the book Romance in Marseille, but that was by Claude Mackay. He wasn't the only Harlem Renaissance writers. We had, um, and many of them migrated or moved or lived for some period of time in Paris, but they moved to France because they felt liberated and they went there to pursue their craft. There was Langston Hughes. He lived in Paris for about 6 months. There was W.E.B. Du Bois. He went and lived in France for quite some time after traveling extensively in Africa, as well as there are many, many Harlem Renaissance people that we hear about now. I don't know if we hear about them, but I guess we have to tell our kids about it because I don't know what they're learning in school these days. Now, here we go, Lieutenant Josephine Baker. So we talked about Josephine Baker as a performer because in 1925 she went to Paris to become a performer and she was an overnight success. Now that was in 1925. So here we fast forward to 1940 and that is when World War II comes on the scene. So World War II, she was very famous in performing in Paris. She even traveled to Belgium and Berlin. And while she was in Berlin, the brown shirts, the Nazi brown shirts protested against her performing, but still it was an overnight. It was a smash anyway. But Josephine Baker in the 1940s, she joined the French Resistance. And she joined the French Resistance because she said, hey, I love France because they welcomed me and they gave me my life, and I would never have a life like this anywhere else. And so she joined after marrying a Frenchman. He was also Jewish. He was a Jewish Frenchman. She married him, and that's how she became a citizen. But she had already learned to sing and speak French and perform in French. In those days, not very many African Americans learned French, but she stayed and she learned and she married a Frenchman. So at that time, she's a citizen of France. She joins the French resistance. Actually, the French intelligence service is what she joined. And she actually put her life on the line for her country, her new country that adopted her, and she adopted them. So this is her in her uniform in 1948, and this was after the war, but she was a lieutenant. And during World War II, Marseille was the hub of clandestine activity because Paris was occupied by Germany at that time. So many people, many of the musicians who were already living in France during the time moved to Marseille. And plus, it was a port city. So Josephine moved to Marseille. She also had a chateau north of Marseille, but she actually used her celebrity status to pass information and gather information and pass it to the Allies. So she was a hero. She sent messages to the resistance. She actually hid weapons and explosives in her chateau. She also hid Jewish people at her chateau to escape being sent to concentration camps. So in Marseille, there was actually a group of Jewish people who were deported. They tried to escape to go to the colonies, the French colonies, but by the time they got there, I think it was Martinique or Guadeloupe, one of those French colonies, and because those islands at the time were under Nazi sort of rulership, they wouldn't let them land, so they actually were deported again, and so they went to, like, South America, so they escaped the camps. So that actually worked out in their favor. So, she gathered information, sewed it into her gowns. Um, she had in her sheet music, she had messages written in invisible ink, and she passed information to the French resistance, the English, and the US. And she did this. The Germans didn't think anything of her. No one suspected her of being a spy, but she was there in the club doing performances, listening to these German officers, passing information along, and no one suspected a thing. She was a famous performer, so she had lots and lots of costumes. So she was able to hide things in her um, luggage that she used to carry when she traveled, because she actually left Marseille and went to Algiers because it got a little bit too hot for her there in Marseille, and the Germans were looking for her. But so from North Africa, she was stationed there as well, but she was still passing information and traveling. She went to visit the troops. Yes, it is interesting, isn't it? She went to visit the troops and US and European troops, and she refused to perform for US troops that were segregated. If they had segregated audiences, she refused to perform for them. So she was actually Lieutenant Josephine Baker at that time. Okay, so now when we move on, we talk about Marseille was actually a bustling jazz port. And because of the diverse population, and because it was a hub and a trading port where people could come in and out of Europe, that's how they would get there. It was easy. Um, it was actually a hub for creativity and intellectualism, as we already talked about some of the poets and the writers. It was a gateway for African American and Black musicians traveling to Europe. So when they were traveling to Europe, to perform, because many of them were soldiers in World War One, and when they went to Europe to serve and in France, they discovered that they were treated just like everyone else. There was no segregation. So many of them, once they got out of the army, they went right back, and many of them were not even talented, but just because blackness was associated with jazz during that time. There was Eugene Bullard. He was a famous pilot. The first pilot, he actually flew for the French. He was the first black pilot, but he flew for the French because he wasn't allowed to do that for the US. He actually became a club owner, but he went back to Paris as a drummer, learned how to play drums, and then became a club owner. So this was opportunity for African Americans during that period of time. So it was like a haven for the American musicians, not just the musicians, but also like your artists. And there was a famous sculptor, I don't remember her name. Um, okay, so Elmira, no, Elmira, I'm in South Carolina. So I don't know why you can't see the broadcast, but we're streaming live, and I was able to see it on my mobile device. So you could probably catch the replay. I don't know if you're watching on YouTube or you're watching on Facebook, but it looks like you've logged in here on StreamYard. But I digress, but I'm gonna go on. So now we're going on to Marseille and jazz. So there was a famous musician, a jazz artist named Sidney Bechet. And Sidney Bechet was from New Orleans. He was a black Creole guy, and he was one of the first jazz soloists. And he went to England, then he went to France, he went to Germany, other places playing his saxophone. He didn't even read sheet music because he felt that it would take away from his being able to feel the music, but he was so good. He just had a temper and he used to get into fights and he got deported a couple times. But in the end, um, France invited him back and that's where he lived out his life, the rest of his life, and he had a kid when he was close to 60. But during he was from New Orleans, and New Orleans had their own flavor of music mixed with Creole. It was Creole, so it was mixed with classical, European music, the African, the Caribbean, those different vibes were all mixed in. So that characterizes New Orleans. So he mixed that New Orleans style with his form of jazz, and it was sort of like a New Orleans flavor of jazz. And that was Sidney Bechet. And he lived in Marseille during the later half of his life. Okay. Now, the in the modern era, we have a mix of traditional and modern influences. So we have a lot of people from North Africa and West Africa, and they bring their culture and their music, and it sort of merges with all of the old forms of jazz. So this is just an example of a place called Le Jam that's supposed to be one of the best jazz places in Marseille. And there are jazz clubs all over Marseille and France, as a matter of fact, because jazz is really, really big in France. They just fell in love with black culture and jazz. And because of the African Americans, that's when they first heard it, when the 369th Infantry band played in France, and they toured throughout France during World War One. That was the first time they heard jazz. Okay, now we're going to move on to the river cruise. So that is just Marseille. Marseille is the last stop on the itinerary, where this particular river cruise is it's a French river cruise because I sailed on this river cruise in 2021. So it's traveling from Paris. It's 3 nights in Paris. Um, in Paris, there will be some Black history tours. So it's a celebration of the African diaspora and Black culture in France. And so in Paris, there'll be the Black Paris tours. Then on day 4, we'll take the high-speed rail to Lyon, France. That's in Provence, the top part of the county or the province of Provence in France, and we'll embark on a 7-day river cruise, sailing the Rhone River all the way to the south, ending in Arles. That's where we'll disembark. That's on the coast as well, but it's right close to Marseille on the coast. So Marseille will be the Black Heritage Tours as well. In some of these places, we will have an opportunity to go on and tour, but along the way, we'll still be experiencing uh, jazz culture in France because, like I said, it's very popular in France. There's Vienne, there are jazz clubs there. We'll have a jazz onboard jazz experience. Then there'll be a jazz venue experience as we're traveling down the Rhone River. The best part about river cruising is you pack once, you unpack once. Once you get there, you unpack, everything's in your cabin, nice and neat. And as you're traveling, you don't have to unpack and have to worry about traveling to another place because it's like a floating boutique hotel. And you just wake up in the morning and you eat your breakfast, go over what the itineraries are for the day, step off the ship, across the plank, the gangway, of course, but in the middle of the town, and you get to experience the tours. Now, you don't have to, it's not mandatory. There are 2 tours per day, one in the morning and one in the afternoon, and it's always something different. In Lyon, I went shopping. In Avignon, and that's one of the stops we will be at, I went shopping. Pretty nice shopping in these places, in some of the old towns. Okay, so all everything since everything's included, the only thing you'll need is money for your shopping for like your souvenirs. Or if your luggage got lost like mine, it never made it, but I had travel insurance, travel protection, so I had to buy a few things, not much because I had a carry-on. So there will be an optional 3 nights in Barcelona, and that will be once we get to, excuse me, don't know why my phone decides to ring. That'll be once we get to Lyon, excuse me, once we get to um, Marseille, our last tour. Once we get there, then once we disembark, we'll take a trip to take the high-speed train, but it's optional, of course, okay? Take the high-speed train to Barcelona. And in Barcelona, there are a couple tours there. The tours, I'll go over it during the slide deck. So come first. And at the end of the tour, the Marseille Black History and Culture tours. Then during the cruise, There'll be jazz performances. All your tours and excursions are included, including your wine and spirits. There's a daily sip and sail cocktail hour where the cruise manager goes over the itinerary for the next day. And there's also a sip and sail. And then there's dinner. And everything is included in this cruise, so you don't have to worry about having a bill when you get off. Here's some more features: gourmet dining. Um, I certainly enjoyed the food. If you have any special dietary needs, they're able to accommodate. If you have any other type of accommodations, they're able to accommodate. You just need to let me know if you're going on this cruise. Um, I have a friend for she has a special diet, and they were able to accommodate her. And she walks with a cane, so it was fine for her. So there are active options, biking and hiking, in addition to regular walking. There are slow walkers and regular walkers as well. So there are active tours, like I said, and we get to experience the high-speed train from Lyon to Paris, actually. No, excuse me, no, Lyon. No, sorry, from Paris to Lyon. Sorry about that, because I did it the opposite way when I went. I went from Lyon to Paris. So the high-speed train goes from Paris to Lyon. And there's complimentary airport transfers with the purchase of air. So if you decide that you want to purchase your own air, then the airport transfers do not come included with the package. You would have to pay extra for those airport transfers. However, if you decided that you wanted to book air, you just reach out to me and I'll book your air through them because they have competitive pricing. And then you will have complimentary airport transfers. That's not talking about the transfers from the hotel to any place else, so the train or anything like that. This is just from the airport to the hotel, and from the hotel to the airport when you're going back home. Okay, so let's see. Paris. Okay, so this is what the hotel is. We're going to be staying in Paris. Is called the Renaissance Paris Arc de Triomphe Hotel, and it's actually located near the actual Arc de Triomphe in walking distance. And you'll be near the shopping. You'll be near the Champs-Élysées. That is the most famous street in Paris, within walking distance of the Eiffel Tower. Um, Everything is there. Public transportation is there. Places to eat. It's a Marriott property. It has spacious rooms. I stayed there. It was quite big. It's a city hotel. So with the land portion, you get free breakfast. Breakfast is included, but not lunch and dinner. But there are plenty of places to eat in Paris. Plenty. So this is just another example of the rooms. That's the dining area. I sampled the food. It was quite good. And then we'll have the Black History tour in Paris and the Josephine Baker tour. Then we take the high-speed rail travel to Lyon from Paris. It's a pretty cool experience. And this is the Colors of Provence itinerary modified for highlighting the African diaspora and culture. So that's the Ama Christina up top. These are some of the cabins, just picture of what the cabin looks like on the inside. And then the lounge. As you can see, it's not as big as an ocean liner. All of the cabins are um, all the cabins are window. There are no interior cabins on a river cruise. There is a pool at the top. You can sit on the top as the ship sails down the river. And there's sometimes they have performances up there. They actually do. There or the lounge, it depends on the weather. There's also, like, if you are into wellness, there are all types of exercise classes on that top deck. They have actually fitness instructors on the ship. This is just a picture of what the cabin looks like. This is a cabin with the double balcony. There are some cabins with just the windows at the top and no balcony, and then they have some with just the French balcony. This is a double balcony where it has a French balcony and a regular step out balcony. So where the two chairs are, that is the French balcony where the windows, you just pull them in, you open them, and they open on the inside. You pull them towards you, and then you can step out on. Well, the air will come in. The Everything will turn off. The air conditioning will turn off. You let air in. I sat mostly there. There's also the step out balcony. That's closer. You'll be able to see that from where the bed is. You can actually open it and step out. I sat, for the most part, I just did my the French balcony for the most part. So that was actually my cabin. So as you can see where the chair is, that's the French balcony. The door is just open. And then the step out balcony is all over to the right where I would open the door and go out. And this is the dining area. The food is really good. The service is really good. I enjoyed it. This is the pool on the top deck. There's a fitness room. There are actually bikes too that you can take out. This is the Rhone River. You'll see this is where we'll be traveling from, where the purple diamond is. That's Lyon, because we'll take the train from the north into Lyon, and then we'll embark on the ship. And then all these little dots are the different towns. Now we'll be stopping in Vienne. Mount Pipet is a stop, but that is part of a tour. Toulon is a place we'll be stopping. Grinan and Tarascon, those are two towns. Those are excursions. Les Baux, that's an excursion. And then Arles is where we'll be disembarking. Pont du Gard is an ancient Roman aqueduct. That's a separate tour. So, and then on this side where we see the Tanel Hermitage, that is a vineyard. That's an excursion. That is an afternoon excursion, or it may be a full day excursion where you can go to the wine country where the Hermitage is actually a monastery where these monks made wine, and they still make it the same way to this day. Then we have Beaujolais. That is another tour. That's close to Lyon, the Beaujolais wine region, where you can have a hike there. There's a chocolate and wine tasting as well as jazz. So we have the Jazz and Wine Experience in Vienne. That's the next little town from Lyon. And then an evening red wine and chocolate tour in Vienne. So we'll be staying 2 days in Lyon, 2 days in Vienne. Then we move on to the steam trade ride. That's another tour. You can select either the steam trade ride or the Hermitage tour. And then we'll be moving on to Avignon. Avignon is a really quaint little city. I enjoyed it. It has lots of venues, restaurants. There's actually some jazz venues there, and shopping. And then we move on to Marseille for the Black Heritage Tours. And that will conclude where we'll disembark in Arles. And then after that, there's the optional 3-night Barcelona add-on. So that is additional. Now, does anybody have any questions at all? Do you want to know how to sign up? Here goes some Q&A here. How do you sign up? Well, you sign up by clicking the link on, because if you're a VIP, you should already know how to sign up if you haven't signed up already. If you're a VIP, you should have gotten an email with the invitation, because tomorrow the trip is open to the general public. So if you don't have your invitation, just send me an email this evening to agent@Scylla Travel. Let me type it in there. And then I will send you the invitation to book, because once it's open tomorrow and the general public gets it, those spots are going to go like hotcakes. Okay. So once you get the invitation, you'll see what the pricing is, and then you'll have an opportunity to ask me questions about it. The deposit is $400 until tomorrow. It goes up to $500 tomorrow because the VIP has got the early bird pricing for the deposit. And yes, I do have payment plans. Your deposit is due in order to save your spot. So I do have payment plans, and the final payment is due March of next year, 2024, the beginning of March. So I have a couple options. You can make payments monthly, or you can make an arrangement to pay some now and some later, however you want me to break it up for you. And then I also have a travel financing program, but that would require I would send you the application to your app, and then you would do the application. And if you were approved, then they would, and you agreed to the terms, then they would send me a virtual credit card. So that would be between you and the finance company. But you don't have to do that because I have payment plans where I set it up for you. Okay. So is travel insurance included? No, it's not included in the price. The travel insurance that I use, that I recommend, is the cruise plan. So it is offered by AIG Travel Guard. It's 13% of your price. And if you purchase travel insurance within 21 days of making your deposit, then you get pre-existing condition coverage, because you know how insurance companies try to get out of paying for conditions that you had before. So you would have that pre-existing condition coverage. You don't have to get insurance through this company. I do have affiliates I could send links to. However, I would recommend it for this trip because you can get the travel insurance up until you finish paying, till your final payment. But just keep in mind that when you get your travel insurance, you want to make sure that your investment, your payments are covered from the time that you make your deposit. Okay, so I can roll anything. I can roll the air into the plan. I can roll any of this into your payment plan. And how many people can fit into a cabin? There are two categories of rooms that can accommodate three people. So there's not a well, Joanne, I have to send you the policy. And if you want, we can get on the phone with an agent because I'm not an agent, so I can't actually speak to the specifics of a policy. So someone from the company would have to answer that for you because she's asking what's considered a pre-existing condition. I'm more than happy to get an agent on the phone to talk to you and answer your question. I can't answer it, but that's a benefit of getting this insurance and getting it within 21 days of you making your deposit. So, is air included? No, it's not. Do you need a visa to travel to France? No, you don't need a visa, and you don't need a COVID vaccine. And but you still want to make sure because you just never know what could change. Right now, we don't need to have any of those things. They've dropped all of it, but you should still have all paperwork that you need. And we do make sure that you are informed on the documents that you need. So we do help you, but it's the responsibility of all travelers. Make sure you have a passport that's valid within 6 months of your travel. So if you need to renew that passport, now's the time to do it. Okay. Now, sign up for the Good Life and Some Soul and Epicurean Experience. The trip will be released to the general public tomorrow. If you want to get that link tonight so you can make your $400 deposit before the deposit price goes up, send me an email, agent@sillatravel.com, and I will send you the link. Okay, so does anybody else have any other questions about this absolutely stunning, fabulous trip spending Juneteenth 2024 in France, learning all about our heritage and history of the Black diaspora and the African diaspora? I use that term interchangeably, but we're learning about people in France because our two countries, France and the United States, are connected. So, does anyone else have any other questions at all? My nose is a little stuffy, so Please, if I sound funny, then that's why. You know why. So, anybody have any comments or any questions at all? Put them in the chat and I'll answer it for you. No questions at all. Anybody on Facebook or YouTube? Does anybody have any comments or any questions at all? So I guess, Elmira, you were on YouTube at first? I don't know, but you found it. So glad to see you. So this is Priscilla with Scylla Travel, hoping that you have a great rest of your day. Catherine is asking, what is the price range? So the price range for the balconies, I can't tell you off the top of my head. I'll send you the link, okay? I'll send you the link. Catherine, send me an email at agent@scyllatravel.com. And if you signed up anyway, I'm going to send it to you because I've got everybody's email, right, who signed up and registered. If you registered, I have your email. So as soon as I'm done, I will send the link out. And all the people who attended, and I can see who attended and signed up, I'll enter you into a drawing for a gift card. And it'll be for coffee. And it's going to be a $15 coffee card, have coffee on me. So I will let you guys know who the winner is. So watch out on Facebook and watch out on your email. If you're not following me on Facebook, follow me on Facebook. You probably got the email. Follow me on Facebook so you can be in the know. Okay, so thank you everyone for joining. I really appreciate you, and I look forward to seeing you on the Good Life and Some Soul Epicurean Experience for Juneteenth 2024. So this is Priscilla with Scylla Travel, and I'm going to ask one more time before I sign off. Does anybody else have any questions? Nobody? Okay, so this is Priscilla with Scylla Travel, hoping that you have a great rest of your morning, afternoon, or evening, wherever you are and whenever you are watching this video. And remember, as always, live the dream. Bye-bye.